Hello, my name is Adam Holden from UDL, and this is The Power of Perspective. On the left is a parking bay aimed to make shopping easier for someone with disabilities. For a person with disabilities to participate at this store, they either park under a label that says you are less as a person, or park further away, missing out on the inclusive resource intended for them. The company was pushed to ask, what is my sign actually saying? And subsequently rectified to this version on the right. This is an example of how well-meaning inclusion results in exclusionary action. This study looked to see if it was happening in higher education. A note on language. Research that explores disability requires consideration for the emotions that this term may evoke. This presentation will use person-first language, student with disability, to align with the research that has helped to identify systemic gaps. Some people prefer identity first. I respect this as a personal choice, and that disability is just one aspect of a person's identity. The recent university accords highlighted an ongoing underrepresentation of marginalised people, including students with disability, in higher education. A history of legislative and policy changes have increased the enrolments of students with disability. However, these students continue to complete their degrees at a lower rate than their non-disabled peers. For students to complete a program, the learning needs to be accessible. But inclusivity is inherently subjective. What one academic feels is inclusive, another may see as a barrier. Therefore, the academic perspective of disability is important because at the end of the day, we decide what is implemented. This led to the research question. What are the perspectives of academics in undergraduate prosthetics and orthotics programs and their understanding of disability, inclusive practice, and inclusive assessment design? Based on Bunbury's 2020 methodology, I conducted 5 semi-structured interviews with Australian academics in P&O. These interviews were subject to qualitative content analysis to identify key themes in relation to the research question. There are 2 notable findings. Perspectives of academics impact students with disability. The participant noticed, especially with reasonable adjustment, that there was wiggle room to interpret the policy, with positive intention of adjusting curriculum for students with disability. But this relies on 2 things. 1, that I feel the adjustment is reasonable and doesn't contradict what I feel is required of the graduate, and 2, that I know how to make equitable change. The second theme was an intent to create an accessible learning environment is often stifled by the pressures of the institution. Participants noted a lack of training around accommodation disabilities. To undergo self-directed learning, there's an overwhelm of resources. This is unsustainable within the pressures of the academic workload. These findings point to a deeper area required for research. What influences decision-making over an academic's interpretation of reasonable adjustment? Qualitative exploration would benefit this research area. The number of participants creates generalizability concerns. Ideally, this is done with a larger team of academics and cross-disciplinary, but the goal of interpretivist research is not to generalize to the general population. Analysis is open to my own bias interpretation. This is mitigated through peer review at several stages of the project and data analysis. And students with disability are the voices that need to be heard, and there's research around their lived experience in higher education. This study starts to question those with the power to make tangible change. That's why the focus is on academics as a starting point. This study seeks to understand if academics' perspectives are related to lower completion rates for students with disability in higher education. A deeper understanding of what drives decision-making may help put our inclusive intent into inclusive action. Greater accessibility in education can lead to more diverse students graduating. But it all starts with asking yourself, what are my signs actually saying? Thank you.